The food you eat, the water you drink, the products you rub into your skin, the cleaners you use in your home. Most people never think about any of it. They definitely don't think about their clothes or the receipt they're handed at the checkout counter. But what if all of this was quietly working against you? None of it feels dangerous. None of it looks like a threat to your health or your fertility, but it is. And this isn't speculation. It isn't fear-mongering. It's science. So what are we talking about here? A handful of studies? Actually, no. Not a handful of studies, not a few hundred either. We're talking about thousands of peer-reviewed studies that show that in fact exposure to everyday chemicals and even organic ingredients can interfere with hormones, impede health goals, and negatively affect fertility. In this course, we will pull back the curtain. You'll learn the 5 major sources of toxin exposure hiding in plain sight, and exactly what to do about each one. We're going to get practical, actionable, without the overwhelm. By the end of this course, you won't just understand your environment, you'll be in control of it. And if you're trying to conceive, this course isn't optional, because when you look at the science, the impact is impossible to ignore. Eliminating certain toxic exposures doesn't just help, it can increase your chances of pregnancy by up to 50%. A major review published on PubMed, analyzing multiple studies from Italy, found that women with higher levels of BPA were 50% less likely to conceive. And in 2024, a study inside IVF clinics revealed something even more unsettling. Women who use personal care products just twice a day, I'm talking washing your face in the morning and washing it again at night. These women had a 24% lower pregnancy rate and higher miscarriage rates than women who use those products just once a week. We're talking twice a day, every day, seemingly harmless habits. So if you think swapping a few products won't matter, if you think small lifestyle changes won't move the needle, think again. Because in this case, small exposures can have enormous consequences. Hi, my name is Afshan Hassan. I'm the founder of Pregnancy Safe Cosmetics, and I'm here to talk to you about toxin reduction. As a founder of a company that has fertility programs and toxin reduction programs in over 20 fertility clinics in the USA, 8 wellness clinics, and a number of dental practices, I can tell you that one of the most commonly asked questions I get is, how much do I have to reduce? And where do I start? So let me answer that. First of all, toxin reduction is not unlike anything else you do. It's not unlike, for example, deciding to lose weight. What's the first thing you do when you decide to lose weight? Well, you get rid of those donuts. By donuts, I mean anything that is so obviously harmful to you getting to your health goal. So with toxin reduction, it's not all that different. The first thing you want to do is get rid of those ingredients and exposures that are definitely going to harm you. And the powers that be, I'm talking about the organizations that deem an ingredient toxic or not, they have decided that there are certain categories and certain criteria that an ingredient has to meet in order to be qualified as a toxin. In other words, really harmful to your health. And so I'm going to run through those categories. The first big one is a carcinogen, anything that causes you cancer. The second one is anything that harms your organs. So let's say you inhale a substance and it hurts your lungs. That would be qualified as a toxin. A third category is anything that does reproductive harm. For example, it causes you to have a spontaneous abortion, in other words, a miscarriage, or it causes your child to be born with birth defects. That would be classified as a toxin. A more recent classification is also anything that disrupts your hormones, or is called an endocrine disruptor. And these are the major categories of harm that the world authorities will look to say, okay, this substance is definitely toxic. So as you can see, there are no casual standards when it comes to labeling something a toxin. It isn't classified that way because it might be problematic.
the bar is actually quite high. An ingredient has to be proven to cause cancer, organ damage, birth defects, miscarriage, or disrupt the endocrine system strongly enough to trigger diagnosable diseases like hypothyroidism. That's the threshold. Ingredients that have a subtle impact or a theoretical impact are usually not at all classified as toxic. Something has to be undeniably harmful to earn that label, which is why eliminating these big baddies is a logical first move. If something is clearly linked to disease, organ damage, reproductive harm, you remove it. But here's the harder question. Is that enough? If your goal is simply to live a generally healthier life, maybe. But most people aren't aiming for generally healthier. They're trying to reach a specific health goal: fertility, hormone balance, energy, recovery, longevity, and this is where things get complicated. The fact of the matter is that we are all exposed every day to substances that are not officially classified as harmful, but often that classification doesn't exist because the evidence isn't definitive enough, or the effects aren't dramatic enough, or then the impact isn't universal. And that's actually a problem. Imagine a chemical that slightly slows a biological process, not enough to cause a disease, not enough to trigger alarm bells, but enough to make it harder for a 38-year-old woman to conceive while having little to no measurable impact on a 25-year-old. That chemical's impact is variable, indirect, and harder to prove. So it doesn't get flagged. And yet, for the person that's affected, for that 38-year-old woman who can't conceive, the impact is real. This gray zone is where many modern exposures live, which means simply cutting out the obvious villains isn't always sufficient. Now, reducing the big baddies is still a powerful first step. Traditionally, you accomplish this by implementing what I call the list method. You download that list of 52 food additives to avoid, you memorize ingredient names you can't pronounce, you switch to organic whole foods, you research water filters, you hunt for non-toxic cleaning supplies, non-toxic clothing, non-toxic cookware, and you do all this while still trying hard not to feel overwhelmed or feel like clean living is your second full-time job. Well, you're lucky that you're here because we'll actually walk you through the major categories of toxic exposure and tell you where you can get handouts with those lovely lists of things to avoid when it comes to your food, water, beauty and bath products, and those contact items in your home and office environments. We'll also give you names of brands that produce clean versions of household cleaning supplies and clothing. So you will end up covering your basics in this course. But I'm also going to be honest with you from the start. If you truly want precision, if you want to know which exposures are actually standing in the way of your health goals, you need more than a bunch of lists. You need personalization. You need someone who can look at your labs, your health history, your symptoms, your health goals, and then connect the dots. And that level of specificity really does make a difference. And to prove it to you, I'm going to walk you through a real client case, a real fertility patient whose outcome changed dramatically once we stopped using generic lists and started targeting the exposures that actually mattered in her body. After that case, we'll circle back and I'll tell you where to get all of these handouts and how you can start eliminating the big baddies.
So before hopping into the next portion, of course, I want to briefly mention a few case studies that I think really demonstrate just how powerful toxin reduction can be. The first case study I want to mention is Katie and Neil. Katie and Neil came to me. Katie was, I think, 34 at the time. Now she's 35, and Neil's 37. Now he's 38. And basically they had one child. They wanted to have a second, had been trying for 18 months and didn't achieve their goal. So when they came to me, what's interesting is while I was working with them, there was another couple who was experiencing very similar issues. Both the women had roughly about the same age. The men had roughly about the same age. Both the men had motility issues and issues with their sperm, and both women had Hashimoto's. And this other couple was very, very active on social media, talking about everything they did with their doctors, with their coaches, and they were working with another coach, not me. But both of these couples ended up being at CNY Fertility, cycling about the same time. And really the big difference in my approach and that other coach's approach was the approach to toxin reduction. The other coach used the kind of standard list method, which is a good first approach,
but an approach that is not personalized. So you still end up missing out on eliminating key environmental exposures that are getting in the way of you reaching your health goal. Now, I want you to notice what we achieved with Katie and Neil when we went further and actually personalized the approach.
Katie and Neil ended up having 40 eggs retrieved, or Katie had 40 eggs retrieved, and they ended up making 19 embryos that made it to day 5, folks. So that is amazing. That's the kind of result you might get with a woman, with a couple in their young, early 20s, but not in their 30s. Go to ChatGPT and ask, what is a great result for a 35-year-old, a 34-year-old? They might say 25 for someone who responds really well to medication, but not 40 eggs. 40 eggs, 19 embryos, all 19 make it to day 5. They actually had more embryos, but 19 made it to day 5, which means they're pretty much ready to, be transferred. And their first transfer stuck. So, and both of these men and women had, like I said, similar profiles, same age. Both women had Hashimoto's. Both the men had sperm issues. Both women were being treated at the same fertility clinic and were given the same type of medication to prevent hyperovarian stimulation syndrome, which means they responded similarly. So, and the other couple, they had to go through 3 rounds to get anywhere near the amount of embryos. So just to tell you that it really does work. What you need to understand about ingredients in general, especially true with beauty and bath ingredients, is many of them are bioactive, which means that they can impact the work of, for example, enzymes. And I mention enzymes because enzymes are really essential to fertility. They drive follicular genesis, or the creation of follicles, steroid genesis, the creation of hormones. They are implicated in your body's processing of hormones, of clearing toxins, of even our absorption, our ability to absorb and use medication. So if you have an ingredient that is impacting that, that's important, right? Now you might say, well, but do we have evidence that, administering something on your skin, in other words, topically, is actually going to impact the work of an enzyme? And here I want to say, yes, we have mouse studies. We have mouse studies where they gave the mouse some steroid, and then they topically administered an ingredient that changed the way the enzyme worked, either augmented it or inhibited it. And they found that actually it did change things. It did affect what the mouse was getting in terms of the amount of steroid. So we do know that topical administrations of, certain ingredients that are bioactive do change the work of enzymes. And that's very important to understand because none of these ingredients are considered toxic. A lot of them are like citrus derived or grapefruit derived or derived from other polyphenols, and they're considered perfectly fine. And that's because it's not going to impact everyone the same way. There are a lot of other factors at play. And let's face it, if you are 38 years old and struggling with steroid genesis or follicular genesis, then it might be a really important thing to look at. But if you're 28 years old and going into a fertility clinic because your fallopian tubes are not working right, then it might not impact you at all. And so this is what I'm talking about when I say, the next step beyond the list method is using a very personalized approach to toxin reduction. So we're done talking about case studies and we're ready to jump into the next part of the course.